I remember when I was little, I used to think that lightning never struck the same place twice. I'm not ashamed of my childhood self, as it's a pretty common misconception. An old wives' tale, unfounded in science, probability, or common sense. As a matter of fact, as the one true holder of knowledge of life, the universe, and everything itself, Dr. Carl says, lightning's more likely to strike the same place twice, given that the same weather patterns are likely to repeat themselves in the same geographical landscape. That's why the Empire State Building gets hit by around 25 lightning strikes per year, and a man called Roy Sullivan has been hit by lightning 7 times. Funnily enough, your odds of being struck by lightning twice is 1 in 9 million, which is actually still higher than winning the Powerball lottery. So why then do we find reassurance in the fact that an uncontrollable force of nature, quick, lethal, and merciless, can only hit a spot once? And on the other hand, why are we so convinced that we're going to win the jackpot next time? There's no doubt it's a proverb that intends to calm our anxieties. It is much easier to reconcile that events may be just freaks of nature, and are unlikely to happen again. It is easier to dwell in denial than face the bluntness of probability and statistics. I don't deny that this is a comforting notion. It's unlikely that my ceiling will fail and pour water all over my bed, let alone twice. Oh wait, no, I live in B&G. But it is unlikely the campus will fall into a sinkhole, or that Sully's Creek will fill with radioactive waste. However, I think this somewhat innocent, throwaway consolation harbours problematic undertones, especially when one begins to think of events such as unprecedented, uncontrollable, and unpreventable. Is it justifiable to believe that an event, albeit rare, will never happen again? Are we thrust into an unwarranted state of lethargy? Are we really wrong in thinking, oh well that sucks, but at least it won't happen again? Second waves of diseases, Second World Wars, a second and a third season of Bachelor in Paradise Australia. These all demonstrate that terrible events, classed as freak and once in a lifetime, are more than capable of resurfacing again, especially in cases where we believed it wasn't possible. Consider a more common example, your average Thursday night out. Allow me to set the scene. Last week you had a big night out, a camera roll filled, bank account hit, spinning head kind of night out. You can't be sure, but you may or may not have texted someone you shouldn't have, possibly ruined a perfectly good floor art display, and somehow misplaced your right shoe. Needless to say, it was messy. However, you're an adult. You pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and tell yourself it won't happen to you again. Unfortunately, this Thursday, your mates have been hassling you all day, so you agree to go out for one drink. It's clear tonight is not going to be the study and conducive evening you thought it would be. It gets to midnight, and you're making a new friend at Kebabo. 20 minutes later, you're rushing down Canberra in a shopping cart. The next morning, you wake up to several angry text messages, a cracker of a headache, and a missing left shoe. Turns out the circumstances that led to your prior undoing could be recreated. One-time mistakes can be made again and again and again. If you need evidence of this, one need only remember the lines at Mooseheads every week. That being said, so what, you ask, the recalcitrant youth you are? I'm young and reckless. Wars are always happening, diseases spreading, and shit TV being produced. What's wrong with a little bit of optimism? Well, I reply, with no qualification and offering only my unsolicited opinion. It seems to me this kind of thinking is intrinsically linked to the idea that things are always improving. Unoptimistic but also passive stance. We slip too easily into thinking that history is on an exponential curve, or for those not mathematically inclined, a continuous upward trajectory. We say to ourselves, yes, that terrible thing may have happened, but now it has, it can never happen again. We pick ourselves up, pat ourselves on the back, and continue unconvinced that there is simply nothing to do to prevent the oncoming storm. And even if there was, it'll probably just pass overhead, right? I strongly believe this thinking inhibits our capacity for reflection, to actively seek to ensure that whatever tragedy, violence, or downright stupid mistake can never come to pass again. Too many times in history have we become resigned to the fact that the freak event, an outbreak, a war, or some act of cruelty could never occur again, and certainly never closer to home. That's just not something that happens here, we tell ourselves. And then when it does come to pass, we stand stunned, and only able to admit that's not what we thought would happen. So what can we do? Being actively aware and ready to transform and reevaluate our societies after freak events is the best way to avoid a cyclical historical cycle. Or, on a more personal scale, maybe just to avoid a camera roll full of donut photos you can't remember. However, do we need the illusion of hope in our lives? Without it, would we be too paralyzed by fears of plagues, nuclear warfare, and moose never being the same again? I'm not going to pretend to have an answer. I'm sure there is time for hope and optimism, as well as caution and critical self-reflection. In the end, there'll always be the good, bad, memorable, questionable, or avoidable at all costs. Even so, there's always a chance that, quick as a flash, you can be struck by misfortune once, maybe even twice again. And if that's the case, I think there's nothing wrong with practicing a little caution, even if it's not what you think will happen.
We have all heard the sayings, don't judge a book by its cover, and it's what's on the inside that counts. While the inside of a person indeed does count, I would have never thought about how much the outside appearance of a person actually matters until I started researching this topic. Take me delivering this speech for one. Imagine if I conveyed the exact same talk I'm about to deliver, but I do so not wearing any shoes, or my shirt has a massive coffee stain on it, or I wear a cap backwards. Regardless if I say such a grand and well-articulated speech, I would be heavily ridiculed and judged to the extent that the merit of my speech is outweighed by my divergent appearance. This speech is now approaching approximately 60 seconds in runtime. Either subconsciously or knowingly, it has been found that you have already guessed my intelligence, my music taste, my interests, my wealth, my family situation, my sexual orientation, and whether you like me or not. According to a PhD study undertaken at the University of Toronto, it takes approximately 5 years for a human to fully get to know another being. However, our brain postulates 95% of another person's entire personality and traits in the first 60 seconds of their interaction. Most of us are currently trying to complete a university degree and get into a good profession. Surely the interviewers will take their time to carefully decide which individual is the best person for the job. Sorry to burst your bubble, but no. In a survey regarding the members of the American Personnel Consultants, over 75% of the people responsible for hiring future employees stated that they made their decision whether to hire a person or not within the first 18 seconds of that meeting. 18 seconds. That's it. 18 seconds to get your dream job, 18 seconds to get that house in Darling Point, 18 seconds to provide food for your family. The 18-second decision is split up into different parts. 55% of that impression is based on appearance, 38% is based on tone of voice, and the final 7%, the actual words spoken by the individual. So it turns out, next job interview you go to, just make sure that for the first 18 seconds of that interaction, you dress nicely, you sound cool, and it really doesn't matter what you actually say. But okay, what if you bought a $10,000 suit, got a new haircut, and even got voice changing surgery to sound cool? Will you be able to increase your chances of getting a job? Well, maybe not. Among CEOs of 1,000 American companies, 58% of them are over 6 foot tall. This is ridiculous when you see that only 14% of the population of American males are over 6 feet tall. The University of Florida has found that for every extra inch of height, a tall worker can expect to earn an extra 1,000 Australian dollars a year compared to an equally skilled worker. Okay, so let's try again. So you got the $10,000 suit, you got a new haircut, even voice changing surgery, and have been genetically gifted, and let's say are 6'4". Will you be able to get the job? Now, well, still maybe not. ANU researchers sent out 4,000 fake job applications to employers advertising on the internet for customer service and sales jobs, changing only the racial origin of the supposed applicant's name. Applicants with Chinese names fared the worst, having only a 1 in 5 chance of getting asked in for interviews compared to the applicants with the exact same credentials, but with Anglo-Saxon names whose chances exceeded 1 in 3. The way someone presents themselves is immediately judged and categorized in seconds. This could be because of their hair color, body size, clothing, nationality, skin color, or something trivial, like how they may be from Sydney and not from Melbourne. I ask that we put an end to these appalling presumptions made immediately. Don't give someone a job just due to their racial origin of their name. Don't give a man a promotion just because he is tall. Don't judge someone for wearing a backwards cap at a formal speech. It takes 5 years to fully get to know someone, not 18 seconds, yet that is how humanity currently is. I understand that this task is difficult. However, hopefully we can all start to begin to notice when we judge someone too prematurely and look to change those actions. Get to know how people actually are on the inside and have real and deep conversations with your friends. Because I never, in my deepest, darkest nightmares, would have thought that judging a book by its cover in 2020 is something that humanity actually does.
There's a long-quoted oratorical mantra, first coined by Marcus Cicero, that says you should never speak for longer than you can make love. So with that in mind, I'll keep this short and sweet. On Wednesday night, I was confronted by breaking news notifications on my phone from various media outlets across Australia. An Australian icon has passed away. The ideal Australian has just suffered a cardiac arrest. I was instantly concerned. Who could this great hero be? As I opened my phone to inquire who it was, potential names started flooding to my head. Big names, the true icons. I'm talking Kathy Freeman, Noel Pearson, Hugh Jackman, Arndo, Adam Goodes, and Clive Palmer. I clicked on the link. Australians mourn the death of Dean Jones. Dean Jones? The cricketer? Now that is not what I thought. Dean Jones was the original maverick. He played without a care for politeness, tradition, or authority. He was never diplomatic, tough as nails, and constantly finding himself in some kind of fight. He was a good cricketer, and I mourned his death. But why is he an image of the quintessential Australian? There is a narrow corridor of affection that this country associates itself with. The irreverent bushman, the informal larrikin, disrespectful of authority, quick-witted, but not sophisticated. It's a self-image meticulously manufactured to appeal to a specific brand of Australian, the Anglo-Saxon male, yet near unattainable for anyone else. We call ourselves the lucky country. Let us all rejoice, we say, for we're young and COVID-free. But what do we mean by that? Who are we really? And what, or whom should I think of when I consider the quintessential Australian? Perhaps we should look at a symbol, some kind of icon, which should come to mind when we think of Australia. And the Southern Cross is the obvious answer. Those stars have captivated the imagination of this place for millennia. The Arnhem Land fishing communities would tell you that the constellation is a stingray, chasing away a shark. According to the Yolngu people, the constellation resembles Mirrabooka, their protector. So when they see the stars, they feel safe. Other Indigenous people say it's the footprint of an emu as it walks away from the nearby Coalsack Nebula. But symbols can be hijacked, and the Southern Cross is no exception. These days we see it most commonly tattooed on Australia Day on the shoulders of teenagers. You know who you are. Worse still, in recent decades, the Southern Cross has become a tool for a fervid, overheated brand of nationalism, like that which spilled onto the beaches of Cronulla in 2005. In the absence of a national icon, perhaps our canon of literature can provide some guidance to our shared identity. Or maybe not. From Banjo Patterson's The Man from Snowy River to the Jolly Swagman in Waltzing Matilda, the prolific composers of our past have facilitated a distorted self-perception characterised by the rugged Aussie, raised on horseback, fueled by disdain for cities, suits, and authority. The worst part about this entirely fictional narrative is that we genuinely believe it. From our air-conditioned terraces, we read Clancy of the Overflow to our children. From our glass towers, we fantasise about riding horses. And when we go on our first family camping trip, we assume that our Australian blood deemed us naturals. Most Australians couldn't tell the difference between a jumbuck and a thoroughbred, and yet we carry with us this foul scent of forgery wherever we go. So where does that leave us? Australians, stranded, without a clearly articulated, widely accepted national identity. Well, it leaves us exactly where we want to be. For every image of the ideal Aussie, for every strict definition of Australian identity, there's those we bring in and those we leave out. I believe in an unprescriptive, undefined Australia. You're not un-Australian if you don't like cricket. You're not un-Australian if you don't like Vegemite. You don't have to go camping. You don't have to speak English. You don't even have to go to the National University, although I highly recommend it. When I saw the headline, "Quintessential Australian Dies," an image of Dean Jones, the Maverick cricketer, was not what I thought of. But it really doesn't matter what I think. We can support many different ideas of the quintessential Australian, one for each of the Indigenous communities and the colourful and diverse migrant nations that now share this land with them. That's a national image, a sentiment, a simple, inclusive, concise thought which we can all share.
It has taken hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, for humans to evolve into what we are now, a seeming pinnacle of intelligent life and a species that dominates the planet. Yet what will we look like in the next 1,000 years? Well, if you left evolution to run its natural course, we would probably look exactly the same. After all, the humans of ancient Rome look fairly similar to us now, and it's been over 2,000 years. Yet humans now have access to technology that could change our very evolution. This evening, I'm going to outline how concerning economic trends and the increasing prominence of biotechnology will likely mean that in the next 1,000 years, we are going to significantly change evolution for humanity, but only those amongst the upper echelons will see this happening. Inequality has always been part of human society, or at least it is an entrenched value of the free market. Since the inception of markets, there has been a degree of inequality between people. We all know the standard image, the poor peasants working the land whilst wealthy counts enjoy disproportionately high income. With the Industrial Revolution, it appears that this inequality has increased. Since the 1970s, wealth inequality in the United States has gradually increased, and today, in that very country, the top 1% of the population holds 40% of the wealth, whilst the bottom 80% possess a meagre 7% of the total wealth. The statistics show that this trend is only going to grow in the coming years, and as such, inequality will shape who can access the benefits of emerging technologies, namely biotechnology. Biotechnology involves the ability of humans to harness and manipulate living beings. With the discovery of the gene editing CRISPR technology, humans now have the capacity to change our very genetic code, and whilst this unlocks significant possibilities to edit and improve our food, such as antifreeze tomatoes or high milk producing cows, the possibilities extend also to the ability to edit humanity itself. The thought of editing humans to make us better is undoubtedly a scary thought, and many argue that even if we have the possibility to do so, society will never allow it. Yet technology is gradual, and the boundaries that define its use are unclear. For example, if we have the ability to prevent children from being born with cystic fibrosis, why shouldn't we? I, along with most people, argue that humans should use technology and its advancements to reduce human suffering. The problem is, once we start, where do we stop? The difficulty, as Yuval Noah Harari points out in his book Homo Deus, is where do we actually draw the line? What if you detect a gene that is associated with chronic depression? What if you find a gene that is associated with below average intelligence? The combination of a necessity for humans to use technology to help cure serious diseases and the difficulty to draw the line of where to stop means that there is a high likelihood that humans will use biotechnology not just to cure themselves, but also to make themselves better, stronger, and more intelligent. And once we start, how do we stop? Particularly if other countries and other companies are using the same technology. The potential benefits and detriments of biotechnology are made worse when you combine this with wealth inequality. Making the perfect baby is going to be incredibly expensive, and as such, only the wealthiest will be able to have them. Given that there is already a strong association between poverty and a lack of access to sufficient healthcare, throwing gene editing technology into the mix could be truly disastrous. In particular, we could see humanity evolving into separate biological castes where the super wealthy evolve into perfect humans whilst the rest of society are left behind. Genetic disorders won't become a thing of the past, they will become a thing of the poor. Therefore, the combination of increasing wealth inequality and the growing prominence of biotechnology poses a serious challenge to the evolution of humanity. This could happen in 1,000 years from now, or most likely it could possibly happen in our own lifetimes. The scenario that I outlined can seem far from inevitable, but with our current projection it seems likely, and as much as this technology seems like science fiction, we need only look at the last 30 years to see how much things can change. It's important that we actually start thinking about this and consider what we as fellow humans want humanity to look like in a millennia. What kind of world do you want to live in? And most importantly, what side do you want to be on when things begin to change beyond our control?
In 1,000 years or so, what will music sound like? An interesting question. The music of today sounds fundamentally different than it did 1,000 years ago. Structures of harmony, rhythm, even tuning systems have changed. And more importantly, the instruments we use to create music have changed completely. Or have they? Because sound, and therefore music, is just applied physics. Don't worry, this isn't about to turn into a physics lecture. So, if the laws of physics haven't changed in the past 1,000 years, though our understanding of them may have, the ways we have of creating sound can't have changed that much either. What is sound in terms of physics? Well, sound is just a vibration in the air. So to create a sound, and therefore to create music, we need a stimulus that will create a vibration in the air. Now, musicologists have spent many years collecting and analysing the instruments of the world and classifying them based on how they generate and stimulate these vibrations in the air. Let's take a look at an example of classification, the Horn-Bostill sax system, which outlines 5 different types of instruments based on how they generate sound. They are idiophones, membranophones, chordophones, aerophones, and electrophones. Let's talk through them. Idiophones are solid objects that vibrate and then dissipate that sound to the air. Examples include xylophones, marimbas, or cymbals, which when struck, vibrate within themselves and then transfer that vibration to the air as sound. Membranophones are constructed of flexible, suspended surfaces that vibrate and then become sound as they dissipate their vibration to the air. An example is a drum, the skin of which is a membrane that vibrates when struck to create a sound. Chordophones are stringed instruments, the strings of which vibrate to create sound. They can be strummed, plucked, like a guitar, or hammered, like on a piano, or even bowed, like on a violin or a cello. Next is aerophones, which are wind instruments that vibrate the air directly. They include woodwind instruments, like flute or saxophone, or brass instruments, like the trumpet. And lastly, electrophones, which create their waves digitally and then manifest them. Electrophones include synthesizers and drum machines. Now, the Horn-Bostill sax system is in some ways flawed, but it does point to an interesting concept, the idea that the methods we have of creating sound are fundamentally limited. This is why there have been very few newly invented instruments in recent history. Let's take a look at some examples. One of the more common modern instruments is the saxophone, which was invented relatively recently in the 19th century by Adolf Sax. It's a metal horn that has keys that can be pressed down to change the pitch, but it has a mouthpiece with a single reed, very similar to its predecessor, the clarinet. They're definitely different instruments, but they're not fundamentally different ways of creating sound. But what about something that is quite different? Let's take a look at the hydraulophone. Steve Mann, who invented the hydraulophone, noticed something about the instruments we've looked at before. Idiophones, membranophones, and chordophones all comprise different types of solid objects. He calls them gaiaphones, which means earth instruments. They're comprised of solid matter that vibrates. Aerophones, on the other hand, use gaseous matter. They're air instruments. If you've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, you know where we're going next. The hydraulophone uses a different state of matter. It uses a liquid, water, to create sound. The water within the instrument vibrates at different frequencies to create sound. It creates this really cool, ethereal sound, but the hydraulophone is a bit of a flawed instrument. It doesn't really translate well to a live musician because it's hard to transport and definitely hard to mic up, especially in a live situation. And the hydraulophone doesn't work well in a studio either because it involves so much water. We don't really want water around the expensive electronic equipment of a studio like microphones and computers. So I don't see instruments using liquid like the hydraulophone catching on that much in the future. So music in the future will definitely be different. Rhythm, harmony, these structures and tuning systems will definitely be different. But the methods we have of creating sound are limited, so the instruments that we use can't really be that different from what we use today. Music in the future will definitely be different, but maybe not that different.
Isaac Caroline, prompt not what I thought, from John, the 23rd College. Okay, so growing up, as I'm sure you will come to realise in this audio recording, I was a very energetic and very passionate child. I grew up in Newtown in Sydney and went to primary school and high school in the surrounding area. I was a normal kid. When I was going through school, it was always brought to my attention that there were those that were normal and those that weren't. And it wasn't brought to my attention in a way that attempted to isolate the people that weren't deemed as normal. There's obviously always got to treat everyone the same no matter what, and that kind of education. But I feel like when you start labeling people as normal and not normal, you begin to isolate them anyway. Now, when I was growing up, one of these things that was constantly brought to my attention was about those people who had ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and how they would not function as well as somebody who didn't, especially in a classroom environment, but generally in life. Now, I was always described as a lovely kid, wide-eyed, full of energy, passion, and a zest for life. And that's true, and it still is. I never was diagnosed with ADHD. Well, not until we get to the catch of the story. Now, when I was 15 years old, I was diagnosed in year 10 because I'm young for the year. I was always quite good at basic skills, and so was accelerated through early primary school. Now, being diagnosed at 15 as a boy is really very odd because normally it's picked up much earlier. Now, my parents, upon the diagnosis, obviously tried to cover it up. Didn't try to cover it up, but tried to deny it. That's the maternal instinct, especially in my mum. She was like, no, especially given the fact that society has taught her that people with ADHD are at disadvantage. As any good parent would, they wanted to try and make sure that that wasn't the case in me and that I was still going to reach my full potential. So they tried to deny the diagnosis. But when we looked back and thought about it, we really thought about how I was as a child and how I was growing up and how I am. Now, look, it all clicked. When I was a little tacker, 4 or 5 years old, I used to run into my parents' room at 5:30 a.m., shake them awake and ask, what is Isaac doing today? What is Isaac doing today? I had this incredible zest for life and would not focus on anything for more than 5 minutes and was constantly running around talking to people and just living my life as any very energetic little bugger did. Now, I also had this extreme ability, and it was called hyperfocus, and it's a part of ADHD that is often ignored. It's not what I thought, especially given it was ingrained in me growing up that people with ADHD can't focus on anything. Now, let me assure you, my 8-hour Lego stints as a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and occasionally now, I'll confess, are an indication that ADHD provides individuals with the ability to explore passions to an extent that people who don't have that ability do. Now, what I love and engage with as a secondary point is real. Because if I don't like you or I'm not engaged, I just lose focus. Now, especially growing up, I developed very close friendships and really developed my friendships with everyone. And I never really focused on the fact that, especially after my diagnosis, on the fact that there were certain symptoms that could tie me down, because quite simply I got distracted when I was being told about them. Now, in my current environment, what do I expect? What did I expect, especially at university coming out of high school? Difficulty watching lectures, going to tutorials, off-siding new mates with my energy, living in a pigsty. And the reality is, I watch lectures in chunks because I can't watch the entire thing. And I enjoy myself in the middle. New mates gravitate to energy. And the thing about living in a pigsty is true. Now, in the end, although we are brought up in a society that attempts to create a divisive environment of what is normal and what isn't, especially at university, and this brilliant university, it's not what I thought, and I am not what I thought I was, constrained to through my diagnosis. I am still a lovely kid who's wide-eyed, full of energy, passion, and a zest for life. And I still am occasionally a distraction to myself and others, but that's the beauty of it. But this condition, this superpower, isn't what I thought, and God, I'm grateful it's not.
In 1,000 years or so, we'll have flying cars, robotic engineering, artificial intelligence that can rival humans in independent thinking. We'll have machines surpassing humans in intelligence, where there is potential of humans and machines to merge, seeing a shared neutral network of mind and technology. In 1,000 years or so, we'll have explored to the depths of our universe, understanding things beyond our wildest imagination. We as humans will reach scientific endeavours once deemed impossible by the greatest of minds. We will reach, develop, and evolve as a civilization, where we unearth the secrets behind the universe, time travel, and even the very physical and mental constraints that define us as human beings. The possibilities are deemed endless of where we could go in 1,000 years or so. There are just so many futures and so many different alternatives out there. We talk about the future like it's this intangible thing that allows us to set goals and motivates us to work towards them. We see the future as a dynamic process of progression that invites us to use our creativity and develop. However, the future is unpredictable and could very easily sway the other way. In 1,000 years or so, we could cause mass extinction of most of the world's animal species due to us socially altering natural selection progresses to fit the desired needs of humans. We could meet the realities of the underlying messages behind the Lorax, where we see the negative effects of pollution, deforestation, and climate change on our natural environment. We could have an exponential population growth, where there are culling procedures being undertaken to wipe out the large quantities of people. We could see the most severe food and water shortages across the globe heightening as the wealth gaps between low and high socioeconomic places increase. We could live through the world's worst political disagreements that send us plummeting into our Third World War. There is a famous quote by Albert Einstein. I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. He believed that the weapons used in World War III would be so devastating that civilization as we know it would be gone. However, you could also see it as time being cyclical. In 1,000 years or so, we could have the potential to be great and to grow, but we could very easily be oblivious to our history and to only look forward, ignoring the negative impacts that have come from our past, sending us into a negative spiral we can no longer get out of. We would be foolish to go into the next 1,000 years or so without looking at our negative effects on the environment, our economy, how we interact socially, and how we respond politically. Progression is defined as the process of developing or moving gradually towards a more advanced state. It's hard to argue that progression into the future will be achieved if we don't start making a difference now. We need to start postulating possible, probable, and preferable futures and the worldviews and myths that underlie them. We need to search for clarity on what is likely to continue, what is likely to change, and what is novel. To progress and flourish in 1,000 years or so, we need to seek a systematic and pattern-based understanding of the present and the past, and to determine the likelihood of future events and trends from them. From doing so, we can base logical and beneficial decisions off those trends. I believe when it comes to our futures, we have hope, fear, and influence. We can choose the futures we want to work towards, as nothing is written in stone. We act on our future visions because people have high expectations for succeeding at something. Considering what might impede their goals gives them motivation and inspiration to try and overcome those barriers. It helps people, businesses, and even nations to make plans to help move past these barriers and challenges. We collect these visions so we can have something to aspire to and appreciate how far we've come and developed. So I believe that there is so much potential for humans to progress into the next 1,000 years and beyond. But we have to be mindful and cautious of the plethora of different futures and alternatives out there. When we choose to be curious about all the possibilities that are being presented to us and take them seriously, we will start to think in new ways, solve problems, and overcome challenges. We will start to develop, evolve, and see possibilities that we haven't even considered before. We are the future for the next 1,000 years or so. Thank you.
My mom is not really the most compassionate, the most loving mother you would see, because in contrast with Western Caucasian mothers, Asian mothers have been known to be tiger moms. My mom in particular was one. She did not really express her love as much as I thought she would. She's the mom who had high expectations of me, who always wanted me to do well, to achieve well in my studies. It was always grades, grades, and grades. My mother often compared me with other kids. My mother always criticizing me, my weaknesses, never once complimented on my strengths. So you see, the thing with Asian parents is that they're always so tough on you, they're so rough with you, that honestly it really diminishes your self-confidence and self-worth, thinking that am I not good enough? So like whatever I do, is it not enough? What do you want from me? This is often, ask any other Asian kid, and I can guarantee you, they will tell you the same experience, that you know what? No matter how much I do, it will never gain my mom's approval. It will never gain my parents' approval. So what's the point of like Asian parents being so tough on you? It's really pointless. Where's the freedom of speech? Where is the freedom of deciding what I want to do? I don't see any of it. No, everything's been decided for me. Be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a dentist, Big money, big buckets of money. Yeah, that's what they want. Things like opening up your own bakery shop, being a florist, being a marine biologist. They are so against these ideas that, no, you can't do those. Why can't I do those? Because you won't have a career. What nonsense? This is my life. How can you just decide on what you want me to do? This is my life. This is my life I'm living, not yours. Like, stop it. But you see, the thing is that we only see through the keyhole. We don't really see the bigger picture. Parents are really tough on you. Asian parents are very tough on you. It's because they care. It's because they just don't know ways to express their love and concern. They're just so overprotective over you that they want to do things for you. They can't afford to let you fall down. They can't afford you to make mistakes because you're just so worried. And from a perspective of a kid, as a kid, I just couldn't see that. Asian parents show love in the most interesting and weird ways. You don't hear them saying, I love you. You hear them saying, have you eaten dinner? Over the phone. You don't hear that. You don't hear Asian parents saying, I'm proud of you. No, they just drill you. They put you in harsh conditions so that when you're out there working, you're able to survive any other boss. That's how they train. But we don't see that. We don't see Asian parents' love as that. It's so often that the love that we thought we would experience is not translated to what we think it is. Because at the end of the day, it's not what I thought it was. So when you grow older, and when you realize that, all those hard work, criticism, lack of autonomy in deciding what you want to do, it's really translated to other means, and that means is love of an Asian parent. It's not what you thought it was, but at the end of the day, no parent will forget their child, and every parent wants what's best for the child.
Hi all, this is Rania, a resident at Hole. In 1,000 years or so, I will not be alive. That is for sure. But today, right now, I feel quite helpless. I exist in a world that has stopped moving, stuck in a state of perpetual sunset. These days, I feel as though I've fallen to the ground during a race. I then try to get up, I dust my knees, and get up again, only to find that there is nobody around me. It's as though I'm deserted on an island without any resources. I then become mired in a state of self-criticism. I ask myself, can't you get it together? Can't you get better grades? You must do better. You must be a winner. And nowadays, scenes of my life run like a movie. I always remember that the older generations say, no pain, no gain. But pain seems to be a constant variable. We are young. We are prone to blunder and be consumed by grief. But I believe that we all change one way or another, of which I am no exception, as nothing in our lives is permanent. Like the gentle winds, some people breeze by us while some penetrate deep into our hearts. And people live in their own ways, people love in their own ways, people grow old in their own ways. Because what does it matter that someone whom we care so much brushes through us like a breeze? What does it matter that you become deeply wounded? Because at the end of the day, it won't be the last time. The hurt will sometimes be so upsetting that we might end up in tears, but what does it matter? I then sometimes question what even is human nature. When someone is away from you, when someone who has broken your trust so many times, you still want to be with them, you still want to be with that person. Yet when someone else, someone who's been with you for your tough times, you don't mind being away from them, you don't mind not seeing them. I've learned that things never work out the way we want it to be. And it is a disturbing fact of life that we all must endure. Life's constant ups and downs, inevitably wearing all of us out. I used to think that life would be better when I turned older, when I graduated high school, when I go to uni. But I sometimes find myself unexpectedly weeping without an apparent trigger. And I said to myself, I should stop tormenting myself for what does it matter, the desired life or ordinary life. At the end of the day, it's all just life. I think that I'm gradually losing the idealism of my younger self. I'm losing the aspiration that I had. I asked myself, what were the ideas that you wanted to do? And I can't seem to recall. Where did the shreds of my broken dreams go? I'm even afraid to even ask. Seems like my heart no longer beat the way I wanted it to be. And I'm slowly evolving into adulthood, yet I feel helpless, finding it hard to even aspire or dream. Then I said, just go with the flow, like the water of a river. Even if you don't know what's at the end of the flow, it is still a flow. It may lead you to something so extraordinary or so ordinary, but either one is okay. Time heals all wounds sooner or later, because, in my opinion, only after enduring the darkness of night we can finally greet the morning rays of light, and only after the passing of winter and spring we can feel the warmth of summer. For the seed to ripen into fruit, the petals of flowers must wither, and the heartaches are a part of life that we must weather. For now, I want other vague words of encouragement, because I know all of you are going through this. I won't dream up fake scenarios to feel better. I'll just let the time handle it. I'll just let the time pass by like the wind to heal all my wounds. Thank you.